Mr. Dobbins.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Mr. Naaman.
Here.
Mr. Souchaki.
Here.
Mrs. Schukert.
Here, 5 present, 0 absent. On behalf of the board, sorry, my screen didn't flip quick enough. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of the meeting. Please identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet, which I think is over on the orange ledge. Oh.
Nobody wants to speak.
Okay, if you change your mind though, and we get to that, just stop. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available to review on our school district's website. Please silence your cell phone during the meeting, and if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Naaman,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Souchaki. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Next up, comments from the public. Hearing none, we're gonna move on to treasurer's business. Hand it over to you, Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mrs. Schukert. Just a couple recommendations for tonight. First recommendation is 4A, motion to approve the minutes of the April 21st, 2021 regular meeting as found in attachment T1. Recommendation 5A, motion to approve new vendors to the school district for W-9s attached as found in attachment T2. Recommendation 5B, motion to approve purchase orders over 5,000 as found in attachment T3. Next one, 5C, motion to approve the student activity programs for the 2020-21 school year as indicated per the revised student activity purpose statement for the class of 2022 on file in the treasurer's office as found in attachment T4. And the last one, 5D, motion to approve the May 2021 5-year forecast as found in attachment T5. As for motions 4A and 5A through 5D.
Thank you. At this time, I'll take a motion to approve the treasurer's business consent agenda motions.
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. Naaman again,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Dobbins. Discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over a couple of items. Item 5A, if we were to click on T2, that's just our lead sheet. We just have 6 vendors, new vendors to the school district. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing with a high cost. First one is for volleyball instruction camp. The second one is for underground scanning for the pool. Third one is for staff professional development. Fourth one is for metal railings outside the building. Fifth one is for more professional development. And the last one is for a reading program that we have. Close out of here.
I wanted to hear you say phonemic.
Can't say that, that's why I skipped it. Item T3 for purchase orders over 5,000. We just have one for tonight. It is for Tierney Brothers. It's 4 Clever Touch TVs that we have for a total of $9,881. Here. 5C, this is just a revision for the class of 2022 student activity purpose statement. They were just adding more fundraisers, nothing out of the ordinary. And 5D is the motion to approve the May 2021 5-year forecast. So we had a presentation by myself during the April 21st, 2021 Board of Education meeting. The forecast that we have for tonight for approval has no changes or edits made. So it's the exact same 5-year forecast that we had. So we had about 3 weeks since we had that presentation done to tonight's. Everybody has a copy of the 5-year forecast in front. I won't go through it too in depth, but I just wanted to talk very briefly. Line 1.010 is our general property taxes, and really the impact for that line is going to be our collection percentage that we have going forward. So the higher collection percentage, the more that line's going to go up or go down. We've been historically in the mid-90s, so forecasting going forward, we're thinking we're going to be there, especially on the hopeful outward of the pandemic that we don't have to worry about it too much anymore. The next line below, 1.020, tangible personal property tax, that line's going to be driven by valuation. So that's our public utility personal property, PUP. As our valuation goes up, and we're hopeful it will, that amount is going to go up as well. Now, we do know it's been slowing down of late, kind of a bell curve. So we may be at the high point of the roller coaster on valuation going up, and maybe it comes down, maybe it keeps going up, but we conservatively forecast in fiscal year 23 through 25 for it to go down a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out. The next two lines we have, 1.035 and 1.040, is our state aid. We have unrestricted and restricted. We're essentially just flatlining unrestricted aid, and for restricted aid, we're kind of tearing that down a little bit for catastrophic cost reimbursement. The unrestricted aid, Mr. Evans talks a lot on the legislative items that are going through right now. I think we're thinking funding is essentially going to be frozen going forward. I'm not sure the state's going to find an extra $3 million to really fund the Cup-Peterson initiative that they're trying to pass, but who knows? But for us, the allocation of revenue is like 5% in our general fund budget, so it's not a tremendous material impact that we have. Item 1.050 is our property tax allocation. We know that line is going down about $200,000 per year because that's our phase out of TPP, so that's really the driver of that line. We'd be really in a good spot if we were back in fiscal year 2018 receiving all the revenue for that line instead of having it phased out. We know it's going to be phased out in the next 10, 12 years or so. It's one of those things we know we have to deal with. That's on the horizon. All the revenue primarily is generated by tuition, our tuition program that we have. And again, we're conservatively forecasting the years ahead. However, there's the possibility that that's going to be consistent to fiscal 21. So we have, a bump in that line item available. We're kind of conservative looking at it. For expenses, we have and I'll skip down to the expense line, personal services that we have. Those are the salaries of the staff here at the school district. We know we're currently in negotiations with Chat and Chase. So when we do the forecast later this calendar year, will reflect the current negotiation numbers that we have going forward. So these are as of, putting this forecast together in April. Employee retirement insurance benefits. This line right here, one of the main drivers is health insurance, and we conservatively forecast over 10% for our health insurance. This past year was 0%, and we're hopeful that the Suburban Health Consortium that we're a member of, has a couple more good years, even though we're in a pandemic right now. So we're conservative on that line, but from a lot of what's, as I'm looking at it, I don't think we're going to hit 10%, so I think there's going to be a bump in that line to our favor that we have. Purchase services, the next line below. The big cost driver would be the approximate 30 staff members that we hire through the ESC of Northeast Ohio as the main high cost. It's about 30% of that $3 million line, so about $1 million there. Supplies, materials, and capital outlay are kind of, year to year, they fluctuate. And if we look at our bottom line 15.010, we're in a good spot as we end fiscal 21, 14.3 million. I really think we're going to have a surplus this year if we look at line 6.010. I know that there's a negative $330,000 deficit forecast, but we still have a couple more months left of the school year, which I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a surplus. I'd be kind of shocked if we don't, so that's good. That means prior fiscal years on our forecast, 20, 19, and 18, we have surpluses. And Mr. Evans, we've had surpluses.
8 consecutive years.
Which is very good for school districts. Now, we know that there's going to be a break-even point at some point where our costs exceed our revenues going forward, but we're doing everything in our power to keep that from happening and delaying that. But it's inevitable after a certain point, especially with the phase-out of TPP, as we're just losing revenue there. I know that was kind of a quick overview. We had a more in-depth review of the forecast. Any questions?
So it says there on line 12.010,
Yep.
the average change, it says 10%. Does that mean 10% increase?
It's really a difference between the lines in that average change, yes. It's a complex Excel formula in that line that holds, but it's essentially the prior years, the actual years.
So, Mr. Muccio, I just want to acknowledge your conversation with me on Monday, this past Monday. We spent a fair amount of time talking about the five-year forecast, as well as a pretty thorough explanation of how grants work and how we account for them and track them. So I learned a lot, as I always do when I talk to you, so thanks for your time.
Thank you, thank you. Just my opinion on our forecast, it's a good forecast, we're in a good spot, we have a high cash balance. If you look at our cash balance at $14.3 million that we're looking to end this year, that's, almost close to a full year's worth of expenses that we have. So if we look at our expenses this year on line 5.050, it's just over 17 million. So our cash that we're holding in our bank account essentially is a full year's worth of expenditures. So we have no revenue, we just live off the cash in our bank, we can pretty much sustain a whole year, which is pretty remarkable if you really compare school districts out there with their cash balances to their expenses. So, I think we're in a good spot. We do know on the horizon that there are deficits in the forecast on line 6.010, so we just have to be very mindful of our roadmap. This essentially is our roadmap, so we just have to, use this as a tool along the way to just kind of guide where we go in the future.
Is there anything else, Commissioners?
I have for recommendations.
Hearing nothing, all in favor?
Mr. Naaman,
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki,
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye, motion passes 5-0.
Then,
So up, Mr. Muccio.
yep, 7A, I just wanted to do a fun little quick activity for everybody. I wasn't
This
sure.
is treasure fund.
It's fun.
You qualify that, the treasure fund's a little different than other funds,
It's a
so.
little fun. I'll try to keep it brief, though, too. I just have written down here to discuss 4 school levies on the May 4th, 2021 ballot and their current 5-year forecast, specifically looking at the levy issue for each and how it may impact their 5-year forecast. It's my hope that this comparison will provide us more guidance on our 5-year forecast regarding any possible levy. So it's really a driver for levies, looking at these other 4 school districts. So if we look at North Olmsted as number 1, we click on that PDF and open it up. It's going slow.
Your computer obviously didn't think it was fun because it doesn't want to load it
No.
for you.
Yeah, it's almost there, it's like 80%, 85,
Oh, I see it.
it's going. All right, we're there. It's 4 attachments here. So number 1 is just the actual school issue, the levy, ballot, the language that they have. So what North Olmsted was doing is they were having an additional tax, and it was an 8.5 mil levy, which is a large levy that they had. Unfortunately, this levy did not pass for North Olmsted. The second attachment, we can see their 5-year forecast. Now, if we kind of compare ours to theirs, see their deficit in fiscal '23. Ours, we're forecasting in the future, again, ours is conservative, but it's fiscal '25. So they're in need of a levy pretty soon. So their levy failed. I imagine they're pretty stressed out and concerned at this point. I just have a couple highlights on there. Look at 4.050 and 4.06. That's debt. We don't have any debt here at our school district. However, they do. They have HB 264 loans. We paid ours off a while back. But look at how the debt impacts your forecast. You have to account for that every year. It's an expenditure, as well as the interest and fiscal charges. Those add up as they go, the debt payments. They do have a deficit on line 6.010, and they have a large negative balance for fiscal '23 on the horizon. So for us, just kind of comparing other schools, they put a levy on with their deficit in fiscal '23 for where they're at right now. So just wanted to kind of throw that comparison out. And if we go down a little more, the third page is the tax year information from the county. And this is just kind of a little comparison to us. Our tax rate is 35.7. Theirs is what? 96.5, yeah. So a tax rate is essentially adding up all your tax levies. So for us here, we don't have a lot of tax levies, but some of the other school districts in Cuyahoga County do, a lot more. We're in the bottom 2 for Cuyahoga County, so we can see where they're at. They last passed a current expense levy, 7.9 mils, back in 2010. They had a big bond issue, $80 million in 2014. It's kind of concerning because theirs are continuing like ours, and they haven't had a current expense levy since 2010. So we're essentially kind of in that same ballpark. Ours is 2012. So, just kind of as a comparison, when we talk, I know that bond issue is a very high amount levy that they have too, but just, some food for thought as we kind of look at this. The last page, page 4, is just one of the pages, the 5-year forecast. I just have highlighted the bottom half of the page. North Olmsted, they're at 96.5 in comparison to all the other schools, and we're at our 35.7 there. Any thoughts before I close out of that one? Okay. The next one is Parma schools. So we open that attachment, and they did something a little different at Parma schools than North Olmsted, and their levy also did not
Bond
pass.
issue and a tax levy.
Yeah. So what Parma did is, I believe this is the second time that they put on their bond issue for approximately $300 million for new schools over there. And as it's opening right now, it's at 80%, 85. All right. The first page of the 4-page PDF we can see is the ballot language that they have in place, $271 million, just principal amount. So that's not the interest. Just imagine the interest on $270-some million that you're borrowing over 37 years. I mean, you're looking at interest of about 40% of that, give or take. That's a lot of interest that the public doesn't necessarily see when they vote for these levies. We go down to the second page, we can see their 5-year forecast that they have. Now, they have a renewal coming up for fiscal '25. They have a good ending balance on line 15.010. However, they made a lot of cuts. I think everybody was kind of tracking what Parma was doing there. But the one unique item here is their levy's a bond issue, so it doesn't impact their 5-year forecast, but levy fatigue does. That comes into play when you have all these levies and you keep putting levies on for the public, and sometimes the public can't separate a bond issue from a general operating levy. So that's just something to be mindful of, as Parma goes, that they keep putting these levies on. The community might say to themselves, hey, we always have a levy on. We have, this one, that one, and they can't really separate the two when we know that there are different funds that account for revenue streams. The next page that we have there is their tax rate page from Cuyahoga County, and we can see their total is 74.9. Those are the total of all their levies. Look at what they've been doing in the past couple of years. They've been putting on a lot of emergencies, and the term has been 10 years. So it hasn't been continuing, which means that they're going to have to renew those levies as they go every 10 years. And if we look at when those expire, 2023, 2029, 2020, and it has 3 asterisk stars behind it. And if we look down in the middle of the page, that means the levy expires this tax year. And then 2026. So they have a lot of current levies on their books that expire, like 3 years apart, give or take. So they're always going to have renewals that they bring out. That's the levy fatigue. So they have renewals, they're going to need a new operating levy at some time, and then they're working on a bond issue. So that's a lot of levies that is going to the public, which causes that levy fatigue that they have.
Got one question. You said that nothing in their debt, I believe, shows up in the 5-year forecast? Neither principal or interest payments would get picked up by that, or
It
no?
would, yes. The debt
Okay.
from the bond issue would be Fund 2. So that would be outside of the general fund,
5-year forecast.
001, and the
Okay,
5-year
gotcha.
forecast. Yeah, 5-year forecast primarily is going to be your general fund, 001, and typically bond issues are always put in the 2 fund, and they're separated from a 5-year forecast, so you don't account for that bond issue.
I have a question. The emergency ones, what are, how is that different?
Tom's your one?
Yeah, well, they can do them for, they're all termed. So they can do a 5-year, 10-year emergency levy, and then it just comes off the book at that point in time. So, and they can set the millage at however they want to set the millage on those, but those are all limited out. We have, all of ours are continuing, so emergency levies are generally a termed levy.
Are they easier to pass generally?
Well,
Not necessarily. Do people understand, would the public understand?
Well, that goes back to when we were talking about levies. It has to do with education of the, ours are all continuing. Quite honestly, our constituency, that's that's what our people know in the district, that we have continuing money. We haven't been on for PI, we haven't been on for a bond issue, we haven't been on for any kind of emergency levy. Emergency levies will arise, I think, when, you'll see districts pop, when they have some real short-range deficits that are gonna show up on their 5-year forecast. So I think that sometimes is the methodology behind that. Every district's a little bit different with it. Theirs is a mix at Parma. You can see where the emergency levy started coming in there. Other districts, Ted's over in Brooklyn, they're on the ballot like almost every other year, the way theirs are expiring, because those are shorter term emergency levies. They might be a 5-year term or whatever. And sometimes districts do that with the hope that their state's gonna fix the educational funding, whatever it might be. Enrollment, if they're seeing drastic changes in enrollment, they sometimes say, we don't know that we're gonna need that on an ongoing basis if there's a sharp enrollment decline in the district, the trend of that way. So there's a lot of things that play into that when they make those determinations.
Sometimes communities, the way that levies are sold, it's kind of easier to say, hey, this is only for 10 years, and you have the opportunity after 10 years to vote on it again. So sometimes people like that aspect as opposed to saying, this is forever, essentially, continuing levy.
It's interesting though, with like the, when you talk about like levy fatigue and stuff like that, how, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, like, how many emergency ones pass versus continuing. I don't know.
That's a district by, to talk to different superintendents is really a philosophical look on that, because, Parma had gone a long stretch of time without passing a levy, and then when Jeff Graham was there, they passed a pretty good-sized levy that kind of pulled them out of the fire for a while. You see they've had some emergencies passed in between. That's been the way they've gone about it. We were just talking, their current superintendent, Charlie Smilek, I know very well. Charlie, between his last district and this district, hasn't been able to pass a levy yet. And he was in the paper today, article about the bond issue failing. He was very upbeat. It's all about, we're gonna get back and focus on kids. We'll make decisions, we'll do what we have to do. But actually, Mr. Sachaki brought the Gazette in, and literally, which is the paper that goes to Brecksville, Broadview Heights, North Royalton, Parma, Seven Hills, Independence. There were 2 full-page ads, vote no ads in the Gazette against Parma's levy. 2 separate groups. A group to save Parma High School, because this bond issue would have gotten rid of Parma High School, and they'd be Parma East and Parma West, and a group that was just generally opposed the levy on general. So two organized groups that had the money to pay for full-page ads to vote no.
The next forecast, there's just 2 more. This one's closest to ours, Rocky River. If we were to open Rocky Rivers. So what Rocky River was looking to do was an additional tax as well, and also theirs did not pass. They were looking at a 4.9 mil levy, so that's page 1. Page 2 is their forecast. If we take a look, it's similar to ours in many ways. They have deficits in fiscal 20 or fiscal 21 through 25. They also had one in fiscal 2019. But we can see that their negative balance on line 15 starts in fiscal 24. So again, ours is fiscal 25, theirs is fiscal 24, and they put their levy just on right now, and it didn't pass. So you always want to leave enough time, to plan, because you never know what's going to happen with levies too, and you don't want to necessarily wait till the last moment because something could happen. But I think our forecast is similar to theirs. We're a couple of years ahead of where they're at. And again, the idea is to be as efficient as possible and not go the levy route. So that's always the primary way to go, that we really try to have that philosophy. Their tax rate page, if we look at that one, they're at 91.27. That's the 3rd page on there. Again, we're at 35.7. They're at 91. So we basically have to triple all the taxes here in the community to get to where Rocky River is. So imagine taking all the tax levies that Cuyahoga Heights has and putting all of those tax levies on, and that gets us to about, 70? And then we essentially do that again, and that gets us to approximately 90, where they're at. That's a lot of tax levies, where they're at. So that just really puts the perspective of where Cuyahoga Heights is compared to those other school districts. And on that last page, Rocky River isn't even the highest in Cuyahoga County. If you look at Shaker Heights right underneath, they're 189. So they're almost 100 points higher than Rocky River. So you take tripling ours, and it gets us to maybe Rocky River. And then we have to, what, triple it again? If not more, to get to where Shaker's at. That's a high tax.
Shaker might be the highest in the state.
So just for perspective. And what Rocky River is doing is they're doing small levies. So they do current expenses continuing, and they kind of keep it in that 4.9 mil range that they have. So I know some schools go 7.9, 8.5, stuff like that. They've been trying to keep it around 4, always have a 4 there. So that's kind of, I think if you just look at their past history, that's kind of what they try to do.
Their bond issue is build a new middle school.
Yeah.
They're still in the high school, they did some renovations, but they built a new middle school, much the same as us. It's an older district with some older buildings, and it kept the buildings in incredibly good shape, as we have. And I think what Rocky River saw through the 90s and 2000s was kind of a decline of enrollment. It's much like us, people don't leave the community, so there was no new housing, people weren't moving in. People go to Rocky River, got great city services, they never leave. So the student enrollment was actually kind of on a downswing, so.
And the last one for tonight is the fourth one that we have, Springfield. This is from Summit County, so it's outside Cuyahoga County. This is kind of an interesting forecast to take a look. I'm not sure if anybody had the chance to look beforehand, but what they went after was an income tax that did not pass. But the second attachment, if we take a look at their 5-year forecast, look at line, the very, very bottom line, line 15. What does everybody see in fiscal 21? It's not a positive balance, but it's a negative balance. It's a high negative balance. Negative 3 million. So how are they still operating, but they have a negative in their general fund?
Yeah, how are they?
What they're doing is they're using all their other funds right now. So people can't spend from the 200 fund, from the 300 fund, because that cash is sitting in the bank, and they're living off that cash in the bank that's for the 200 fund and 300 fund, but they're still paying general fund expenses in the negative. They're paying salaries of employees. So they're working on, going in fiscal emergency at this point. They have a HB 264 loan, line 4, that looks pretty new, because it wasn't in 18 or 19. And look at those debt payments. I mean, that just kind of buries your forecast as you go along. But the real kicker is, you never want to be in a negative, because it's very hard to get out of that. So, you have to work on, if not new taxes, you have to look at making drastic cuts. And that's not to the benefit of anybody when you do that in the community. So, this is one of the worse off 5-year forecasts I've seen. But, I mean, I can't imagine where they're at right now with a negative $3 million balance that they're looking to end fiscal 21. And then they have a negative 4.5 million balance for next year. So that's, that's kind of the catastrophe that no school wants to be in. But I just kind of wanted to show that perspective that, schools can get to that point. And, if you may have no cash in your bank at that point, so you're scrambling to get loans. And if you get a loan from a bank, you're just tacking on interest at that point. I mean, is that really the best financial move?
Yeah.
So that just, that it's a really, really hard predicament to be into. So, and unless there are any questions, that's all I have. So hopefully this kind of gives some perspective on ours. I think ours is closest to Rocky River and, on the horizon. So.
No county in Ohio with a major urban center in it has passed an income tax, no district. So if you look at the income tax, districts that have passed income taxes, they're all outside of the counties with major urban districts.
I thought Euclid had one.
No, not for the school district.
I thought they did. But they got it in underneath the wire when.
I don't think you would, no,
the
last time
state put out the income tax possibility and then they changed it the next year.
last time I looked,
thought they squeezed
no one
it
in
Oh, okay.
those major centers. You see some urban areas, like Cloverleaf has had probably one of the older ones, like 1% income tax, and again, but not to, 10 or 12 maybe longer than that, 15 years ago, people were trying to get them through, and there seemed to be a little bit of a trend, and then it just kind of stopped.
Yeah, it's not it forces the residents only to pay for their school,
Correct.
period. That's why it's not a good idea. I mean, here we are very fortunate to have a large industry base, and that helps pay for the schools. Put in an income tax, and it's strictly on the residents.
Ready for me?
Sure, you're up.
All right, superintendent's business, 8A, motion to adopt College Board, Springboard 2021 materials and resources for grades 9 through 12, one-year license effective with the 2021 school year. B, motion to adopt Houghton Mifflin Harcourt into Literature 2021 materials and resources for grades 6 through 8, five-year license effective 2020-21. C, motion to adopt Savas Learning Envision Math 2020 materials and resources for grades 1 through 5, five-year license effective 21-22 school year. D, motion to approve class of 2021 graduates per the attached list. 9A, motion to approve the final banquet contract with Windows on the River for prom 2020-21. B, motion to approve a change in PSI master contract to reflect an increase of 3 additional days for summer camp, June 8, 9, and 10, 7 hours per day, total 21 hours at $20.17 per hour for a total of $423.57. C, motion to approve membership at no cost into the Ohio High School Athletic Association, grades 7 through 12 for the 21-22 school year. 10, motion to accept resignation of Donna Hanna as cafeteria staff member effective 4/27/21. Employment certified staff. A, motion to approve the reemployment of Brooke Dragon on a continuing certified contract effective 21/22. B, motion to approve the reemployment of Kendra DeVito, Cuyahoga Heights school teacher, and continuing contract effective 21/22. C, motion to approve reemployment of Kelsey Healy as a Cuyahoga Heights teacher, continuing certified contract 21/22. D, motion for the reemployment of Jory Huffman as a Cuyahoga Heights teacher on a continuing contract effective 21/22. E, motion of reemployment of Sarah Meister as a Cuyahoga Heights teacher on a continuing contract effective 21/22. F, motion to approve reemployment of Caitlin Nolan as a Cuyahoga Heights teacher on a continuing certified contract 21/22, effective 21/22. G, motion to approve reemployment of James Rademacher, Cuyahoga Heights teacher on a continuing contract effective 21/22. H, motion to approve Kristen Rex, Cuyahoga Heights teacher on a continuing certified contract 21/22. I, motion for the reemployment of certified staff 21/22 on one-year limited contracts. J, here we go, Hallie. Approve the employment of Hallie McPherson as a middle school, high school art teacher for the 21/22 school year. K, motion for the employment of Samantha Gambita as an elementary school teacher for the 21/22 school year. L, approve the employment of Courtney Littlefield as an elementary school teacher for 21/22 school year. And 12, approve the May substitute teacher list for 2021. And I asked for the board's approval of those items.
Can I please have a motion to approve the superintendent's business consent agenda motions?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Souchaki,
Second?
seconded by Mrs. Utter. Discussion.
I'll go quickly, I don't want to keep Hallie waiting over there. The Ohio High School Athletic Association, if you've read in the newspaper, it's free for now. They may begin charging by sport. Quite honestly, I was in favor of that. I recommended that to the OHSAA last year when the pandemic hit, that we as members of the Ohio High School Athletic Association have not only gotten a free ride for the many, many years, they've given money back to us. So when we transport athletes like to the state football, when we were in the state football championships, they gave us money back based on the distance that you travel when you send and where the state title was, where the championships were being held. So we've been in a very, very good. There's a lot of schools screaming about paying dues to the OHSAA. They've been a great group. I personally don't have, and we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking about a per sport. We offer a lot of varsity sports here. I think that's a pretty fair deal in the end. The number of continuing contracts, we didn't do them last year because COVID struck them and we couldn't get the observations in, so we bumped. That's why that there's that large number this year. a lot of the staff members have worked very, very hard. And some newbies. Hallie McPherson with us here today, a new art teacher coming to us. Had the pleasure of following up on one of Hallie's references, a longtime friend of mine from Berea. I know Mr. Dobbins is shocked that I would have known somebody on an applicant's list. But Ann Cole is a friend of mine. I actually coached Ann's son, was Ann's son's football coach, and she's a cooperating teacher at Baldwin Wallace, and worked with Hallie on some of her student teaching, and really was told me that in all of her years of doing that of any subject matter, that Hallie was the top student that she'd ever done. Some of the things that she had initiated, and I know Mr. Janitovich had a real job on his hands because there were some outstanding applicants for our art position. Looking at some of the portfolios that were presented and some of the information that was put forth, just truly, truly outstanding. And then the other two in the elementary, Samantha Gambetta, as you know, we've heard that name before. Sam's been a teacher's aide in the elementary building for the last couple of years, doing a long-term sub for us this year to fill in. Has done a great job, actually great presentation as well as with Mrs. Houchin. And Courtney Littlefield is coming to us from Dublin City Schools. Her husband's relocating up here. Again, outstanding process by Mrs. Houchin and the team that she put together. I sat here with the final three candidates and said I'm leaving the room after it was over, because quite honestly, I don't know which one of the three I would have picked because they were all outstanding. And I think Mrs. Houchin said that the process, a lot of outstanding applicants came forth. So we're in a very good place at Cuyahoga Heights Schools. A lot of really talented people want to come to work for us. I'm very happy about that. So I ask that those items be approved.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Neiman?
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. And welcome.
Welcome, Hallie.
Hallie, why don't you tell the board where you're coming from, where you're currently at, and where you're coming from?
Yeah, so Baldwin Wallace University is my education. Another UW grad at Cuyahoga. I've heard you have a lot. Currently, I'm at Albert Einstein Academy. It's a charter school. We're separated into 3 different cities. So I'm at Strongsville, but there's one in both Olmsted and Lakewood. Some of the buildings are just middle school, high school. Mine is elementary through high school, and then there's another one that's elementary through high school. So I've got lots of experience, and I'm just really excited.
One of the things that jumped off the paper for me, and Mrs. Cole talked to me about, is that Hallie did her student teaching at Olmsted Falls, and she did it in the primary grades. She took it upon herself. She saw some special needs kids in some of the pre-K to develop an adaptive art program. Nobody asked her. It wasn't part of what she had to do for the student teaching. And Mrs. Cole said it was one of the most impressive programs that she had ever seen. And she did that on her own. She took the initiative. As a student teacher, you have a lot of responsibilities with just the classes that you're teaching. Then to step outside of that and to develop a program that that you saw a need for really got me excited. You know that we want to do a lot of things with our resource room here, and Hallie's another asset for us to do some things with those students. I think I previously told you our new family consumer science teacher also has some experience with that. So I think what we're looking to create for our resource room kids with some adaptive art and some family living skills upstairs, we're really putting together just a rock solid program with 3 just high energy, outstanding teachers. So I'm just really looking forward to where we go with that. So.
I just wanted to say, for the elementary positions, Mrs. Gambetta was going to come tonight, but she really wasn't feeling very well, so I told her to stay home. And Mrs. Littlefield, they both wanted to say thank you. She made 3 trips up here from Dublin for the interview process, so I told her she did not have to make the trip tonight. But we did have over 125 quality applicants, and we had to pick from that to even get to interviews, and then from that down to the 2nd and 3rd interviews. Amazing candidates, some hopeful prospects for the future as well. So when people retire, I'm going to go try to nab those other people and steal them because they want to
Mrs. Houch and I already started those conversations with some of those people, let the hint, hint, wink, wink, that, don't go too far, please. Some other things, we have a tentative agreement with Chat. We look to ratify that in June. We're gonna sit down one more time to go through all the language, make sure we're in a good place there. We began negotiations with Chase on Monday evening. Spent a couple hours there just going through the proposals. We're gonna get back at it in 2 weeks, and I think in a couple days that we can put all that together. Some legislative items that you saw my emails to Representatives Robinson and Crossman this week. The backpack legislation that House Bill 290 kind of jumped out of nowhere. It's quite honestly some of the worst legislation, educational legislation I've seen in a long, long time, and it's just very frustrating. So, House Bill 1, the budget bill, the fair funding proposal, I think you previously saw the email that I sent to Senator Dolan on that, just urging them to leave that intact. I think right now the Senate wants to kind of carve it up a little bit and take bits and pieces of it. A lot of years of work went in it. That was a bipartisan bill, a funding plan. They had input from superintendents and treasurers around the state. I think there's some solid work there. I'd hate to see them carve that up. So those are some legislative things going on right now. Senator Dolan and Senator Huffman have been invited to Cleveland Heights. Cleveland Heights is the school that's most largely impacted by the voucher system. So Superintendent Kirby has invited both of them up, and I'm part of the first ring. I said I'd more than happily come over and spend the day with the legislators and walk through the building and have some discussions with them, as did many other first ring superintendents. Had a rekindling of our business advisory committee with COVID and everything else that had kind of gone by the wayside. Jennifer Hedinger is our career ed specialist that we work through the Career Center with. Done a fantastic job. Mr. Sachaki was here for that today. Had a really, really good group, and they came out with some really solid ideas that we're going to get the ball rolling with that group again. Probably put, and I think, Gary, you might have been on the board back then. I don't know if Linda, you were, the district had a work ethic program. I think Anthony might have gone through it at one point in time in Victoria. That kind of fell by the wayside when we had to make some cuts back in 2010 and 2011. We're looking to kind of rekindle that and start talking to our juniors and seniors about work ethic and work skills. And I've got a great base of employers in the community here that are going to help us with that. So really excited about that today. Spring sports are headed to tournaments. We talked about this a little bit. Softball's the #1 seed in the district. They won by a forfeit today, and that was actually the district board's decision. We were willing to move the game back to tomorrow. The team they were supposed to play thought the game was tomorrow. I don't know how the schedule was printed 2 weeks ago. The dates were all set in advance, but the district board said nope, you play or you forfeit today. So our girls move on to sectional champs. The boys are on a roll. They're playing extremely well right now. Jonathan Naaman's mowing them down. They just got done thumping Brooklyn the last 2 days. Tournament start for them next week. Heading on the tournament trail. Track, the conference meet. First round was last night. Second round's tomorrow night. Next week we host the districts on Wednesday and Friday here. So there'll be a lot of activity here next Wednesday and Friday. Testing, I need to blow Mr. Young's horn a little bit. 99.9% participation rate. I challenge anybody in the state of Ohio that's tested at that rate under these conditions. And he told me he had no gray hair before he started as our testing coordinator here, and now he does. So, but hats off to Mr. Young and our staff and everybody involved in that. That goes back to Joy in the fall when we were on remote, getting kids in, getting third graders tested when other districts were saying we can't do it. So that's a total team effort. I'm extremely proud of our staff on that. Coffee Talks this Saturday. Mr. Young's going to talk about the extended learning plan. I'm kind of sneaking out one of our veterans that was killed in Vietnam. They're doing a memorial service, so I'm going to represent the district at a memorial service down in Clinton, Ohio on Saturday morning. And some retirements. I think some of you saw today, I sent you an email. Doug Amari is retiring. He wants to put together a formal letter for the board. I will tell you that's 70 years of Amari's in our social studies, 70 consecutive years that Amari has taught in our social studies department. And Doug said he has no family members that are ready to step in right now. So, but his uncle Ron before Doug, and then Uncle Ron retired and Doug took over there. So certainly a legacy of outstanding education down there, and Doug will be sorely missed. And I asked him how that could happen because Doug's a year younger than me, so I'm a little frosted with him right now. But and Mr. Sokol, I talked to Mr. Sokol today, and Mr. Sokol's gonna retire as well. He spent a number of years at Trinity High School before he came here, and really did a phenomenal job of rebuilding our band. Some of us that remember the Marching 12 or the Marching 13, they laugh, but we know that it was true. But our band this year in a COVID year had 90 students in it. We would have had over 100 without COVID in our band. What's happened in our music program is not by accident. It's through a lot of John Sokol's hard work. Jane Pittman also retired. David Michael's taken over for him. So John, those are two huge sets of shoes to fill. So I know Mr. Janitovich has already started to screen some social studies teachers. He's wearing out. Him and Mr. Burek are wearing out Zoom right now. They'll bring some people in next week, and already I started to make some phone calls about some music teachers and. As this board knows, I'm not beyond beg, borrowing, or stealing from another district, and I know that Mr. Sokol has some people that came through our system that are band directors in other districts right now. So, and I'm sure that those applications will come fast and furious. So, that's it for my announcements.
A lot of long-term, veterans.
Yeah, really bad year for them.
Yeah.
Or a good year for them.
And we're going to recognize last year's retirees and this year's together. I'm still trying to get the date, but we're going to do a little cookout on the last day of school and bring back Mr. Durazio and those that retired last year. Mrs. Wanyerka, we didn't get to say farewell to them, and then with this year's group with Mrs. Seitz and Mr. Mari, Mr. Sokol.
When's the last day of school? The 30th?
The third or
June
fourth.
3rd.
So we're trying. They got teachers' work day in there, so we're trying to figure it out between the teachers' work day.
How we can help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like if we could, I'm not flipping a burger because I
Well,
will mess it up, but.
I'm not letting anybody else flip a burger.
Okay,
You know that I'm not letting anybody else at the grill. So, but I think it'd be a great time for board members to maybe step up if they had a memory of, because those are some teachers that carry some long memories here at Cuyahoga Heights. So
Absolutely.
we certainly want to take the time and recognize that group. So
Hallie, you could leave.
yeah,
I mean, unless.
thanks for coming,
Thank
Ally.
you for coming. Nice to meet you,
Nice to
and
meet
welcome
you.
to Cuyahoga Heights.
Welcome.
All right, we're getting to the exciting stuff. Board adoption,
Exciting stuff.
bylaws and policies. Mr. Young, do you want to, or do you want me just to go through them? I mean, because this is second read.
Yeah, it's second reading. The only one that I had asked for you to review more closely was that wellness policy. Mr. Evans and I went through and checked what we thought was appropriate alignment. I did provide to him and provide to you at his convenience the audit, the triennial audit I did on that wellness policy. I did it based on the wellness policy that we recommended before you here. And I provided the results of those, so you could see where our strengths in our policy were according to this, the WellSat 3 audit, and then where maybe our growth opportunities were. Most of our growth opportunities were things that we electively chose not to mark. For example, guaranteeing so many minutes per week at various grade levels because we want flexibility in scheduling. Talking about the PE option, being able to substitute sports for PE, that's a stance that we've taken here in the district, that we want our students to take our coursework, not just substitute out various activities. So the majority of our policy aligns almost 100% with all the federal requirements. Again, there are some, what they call that, farm to school initiatives. So for example, we don't actively promote local sources of agriculture. I don't know that we have a lot in Erie anymore when the foot farm.
Yeah.
Johnson's farm's there.
There's just not, so I don't know that we actively do any type of promotion. And I anticipate with the new family consumer science teacher, with the health curriculum, that we will start doing some more targeted alignment of nutrition teaching in the classroom with what we do in our food food service program at the school, and then connect that to what you see on the website as well, so.
And the garden's going in behind the elementary building that Mrs. Houchin is tired of hearing about from me. My garden's out there. She wants to know how I'm gonna keep the deer out of them.
I do. I did have a parent offer to bring some staff in, so.
So the wellness policy was the one that I think I was most concerned about. A lot of the other policies we had, they were actually revisions of things we had already adopted this school year with a couple of things. So that was the only one that I had asked to examine, and if you had any feedback and you thought that we should change some things, we're more than willing to do that. I did provide that audit to Mr. Evans to provide to you so you can see the results of it.
So I'm just gonna read through like the titles of them, is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so 15A, policy 2240, controversial issues, revised, second reading and adoption. Item B, policy 2260.01, section 50488A, prohibition against discrimination based on disability, revised, second reading and adoption. Policy 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education, programs, or activities, revised, second reading and adoption. Policy 5336, care of students with diabetes, new, second reading and adoption. Policy 7440.01, video surveillance and electronic monitoring, revised, second reading and adoption. Item F, policy 8450.01, protective facial coverings during pandemic/epidemic events, revised, second reading and adoption. Item G, policy 8500, food services, revised, second reading and adoption. And policy 8510, wellness, revised, second reading and adoption. So I will make a motion to approve the board's business consent agenda motions. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Neiman. Any discussion?
Oh, I have just one comment. I recently had a conversation with one of our residents, and the conversation kind of honed in on what falls within our policy for controversial issues. So I wanted to acknowledge the importance of these policies and how, as a board member, when people approach about matters that I have very little knowledge of, it's nice to be able to refer to an active current policy and provide some meaningful feedback. So thanks for doing that.
Well, with tonight, we are 100% up to date based on what Neola has provided us. So we've gotten caught up based on where we were behind because of the pandemic. All the revisions, we're in line with state law right now. So congratulations to you.
Well, and to you also. You and Mr. Evans and others do a lot of the hard work of going through these policies line by line. So thank you.
Well, that's a favorite part of our day.
No doubt.
I love when that calendar invite pops up.
So thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Schukert,
Aye.
Mr. Neiman,
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next up, board discussions, committee reports and comments. Where do we start? One item I wanna bring up is just evaluations. So is it okay to get that ball rolling? with
Yes.
The spreadsheet, and can you please teach Mr. Mincio how to do it on a user-friendly format? Because,
Takes all the fun out of it.
I mean, whatever you did it on, it was really hard to read. So, maybe Dave could help.
Only flaw you've had in the years that you've been here.
Yeah, and what I think John Britton, I think I mentioned this before.
Yeah.
John's really doing some administrative evaluations are one of his kind of pet peeves. He's tied up with a couple of negotiations right now, but I think I might have mentioned this to you before, he'd really love to sit down with the board and talk about evaluating myself and the treasurer. He's got a little bit different spin on it. It's not a checklist kind of thing. It's about growth, and I think if the opportunity presents itself.
My only thought, like, just because time goes so
Sure.
fast, and he's such a busy man.
No.
Just personally, I just wanted to recognize you guys for all of the things that have happened this year, because I think that there's a lot of new strengths that we have found that maybe we haven't identified previously that I think really, you know, should be shown, and I don't know. That's my kind of thing, is that this year has been super different, and.
It's great, so,
So
yeah.
you guys don't mind?
No, not at all, no, not at all. I'll take a look at how mine's formatted, and I'll take a look at Matt's, and we'll figure it out.
I think it's good for us too, because, I mean, there's a lot of things that we forget as the year goes on, but when we sit down and we actually go through, oh my gosh, you know, they did this, and it's only in 1 year. I think it just, I don't know, it helps us really realize just the whole process and what you guys are doing.
Will do.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, because the magnitude of the efforts that were put in over the COVID timeframe over the last 15 months are extraordinary. And I agree with that. I think it should be recognized in that review. I fully support that.
What else? Is there any update too on, what's it called, the mascot? Are we getting a date on the?
No, let's, give me a date in June or July. I'll tell you, I'm gonna be on vacation in July, so if we can pick a June, like a Wednesday evening, and just call a special meeting
Okay.
and do it in the auditorium. But if there's dates, let's do this. I'll put it in the Friday update. I'll put the 4 dates. If there's a date that doesn't work for you, please respond back to me. And then we'll schedule, I'll schedule it for about 6 o'clock, and I've got some formatting things that Parma used
Okay.
last year, as far as just kind of control the meeting, that kind of thing, and go from there. But just provide anybody that wants to have a say in it, the opportunity to come.
And Matt, I don't know if, Matt Hartman in the back, I don't know if this is you or Dave, but I had inquired about, like, if people don't want to come in person, that they're able to have a voice like on Zoom, and if there's a way to get them on the screen, or,
Yeah, we can use the computer in the auditorium and use that as a player.
okay. I just want everyone that, you know, even if people are out of town, because you're talking alumni and stuff like that, so just everyone get a chance to share their, okay.
So I do have one item. Things are moving so fast legislatively that all I can tell you is that a week ago, I phoned 3 senators, the Senate President and the Chairman of the Senate Education Committee, and then also Senator Dolan's office, and asked in each of them on a voicemail to consider including the fair funding bill into the Senate budget deliberations. But you now have new ground to plow this week. It's
Yeah.
happening so quickly.
It is, and Senator Huffman, Senator Brenner, and Senator Dolan are the key movers, and the thing that was a little frustrating is that I think Senator Dolan was more of we can make this happen, we need some kinks to work out. Senator Huffman and Senator Brenner are not of that ilk, and I think that they kind of pulled him in the other direction, is the feeling we got from our last 2 meetings with Senator Dolan. So it's, you know, any kind of response from the education community, the constituents, to those representatives is important, because they're the 3 keys. Those are the linchpins, quite honestly.
That's all I have.
Do you guys want to go through, like, is there any other discussion items?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I found a couple of things. Mr. Evans mentioned the Business Advisory Council meeting today. Found a couple of things interesting. One of the gentlemen who was there commented that some new employees are scared off by the job descriptions because he looks for chemists, but you don't need a degree in chemistry, right? They're going to train you the basics of what they need for that position. So he said one of the problems that he does have in recruiting people is the job description, so that people know what really is required. Another thing that I found interesting was somebody referred to the recreation culture. And what he said was the jobs that and he's primarily talking about industrial type jobs, right? That the jobs we offer typically are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Which means that when you're off, you're being served by all those people who chose not to go that route, who chose to go into restaurants and other kinds of venues. And I thought that was an interesting way to sell those types of positions to students, so.
That was part of my discussion. I have 3 beautiful nieces that live in, they all live in Columbus, are Ohio State graduates, but they wouldn't think twice about getting on an airplane and going to Dallas for a wedding for the weekend, that their recreation, their activities are so well planned out, that that's just, they work to do those things almost. And then a lot of the jobs today, and we talked in the Career Center about that, I used to tell my students in the horticulture class that you're gonna be busy when all your friends are playing. In the summertime, you're gonna be putting landscapes in, you're gonna be cutting grass. If you're in a floral business, you're gonna be busy around the holidays, because that's when people need to work. And the same with the kids in the culinary arts program. I used to tell those kids, because my son was interested in that, I said, understand this, when all your friends are partying, you're going to be serving the party. So you're going to be working in the evening in a restaurant. Your hours are going to be weekends, evenings. It's not 9 to 5 when, so that comes with the territory. And I think that's an advantage to some of these manufacturing firms. As a matter of fact, Holland was here with the old Alcoa, and they're doing some like really, really neat things where they recognize the need to hold on to employees, so they're not working them in the ground. So they're making sure that people are getting their hours, and then they're taking breaks. They're taking like 3 and 4 day breaks as a business to give their employees some time off to make sure that they're not running them into the ground and kind of keeping them on. So some really interesting things happening right here, in our district, in some of the companies. People being innovative about how to train and maintain employees. So I think and we need to get that message to our students. I need to get that message to our teachers too. And one of the things that I said, one of my things that I wasn't able to do last time is I want our teachers to take field trips into these businesses, because sometimes as educators, we went through school, we went to college, and now we're in school. We never stepped foot in a Nook. We never went down to LTV. We don't know what goes on at Howmet. It's important to see what those jobs are and where our kids can fit in, because they can help, and they need to understand those things.
Speaking of which, it made me think, the senior project, what does that look like this year?
I just got the list. It's just going to take place in a week and a half, but this is the first time I haven't been asked to supervise kids, because all the teachers grabbed on, and the kids. Some of the kids are doing some things virtually. Some are able to do some things in person. I noticed that one of the girls, the Doug supervising, she actually has a senator from another state that she's going to Zoom with to talk about politics. It's arranged. So there's some. They got creative, and they got some. They're going to do some things in the traditional way, but there's the kids are kind of stepping out to do some things new too. I see that we got some auditors. Mr. Damon arranged for us.
That's it. But they, like Jonathan's doing, he's doing several interviews with engineers.
Yeah.
Through basically an engineer for that's out in Menor, and then also he's actually going with he's interviewing people from Boeing. To the Boeing group that supports Valley View. Yep.
It's fair. I'll forward the list to you, because the list fascinates me all the time, and because there's not a lot of old standbys. Normally with kids, a little bit of word of mouth, and everybody goes to this, Metro or whatever. But no, there are really a lot of different placements, and a lot of kids really taking it seriously and looking and saying, hey, what can we find out about some career stuff? So I'm excited about
I
it.
love that the virtual, or the whatever, the
Yeah.
remote world is allowing like some
Right.
really cool, unique.
Yep.
I mean, who would have thought, like out of state, and
Yeah.
it's awesome.
It's been an interesting experience
Another
the last
silver lining.
Yeah.
last 15
Yeah,
months.
absolutely is.
I always think it's the most important thing that they do their senior year. Where my son did his senior project was the Cleveland Indians, and that's where he works today.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that can
That's really
happen.
neat.
And then one of the things that was commented by Dave Mangus, the superintendent of the Career Center, was that people come, they don't have any job fairs, because by the time their students get out, they're already employed.
That's
You know,
good.
they walk right into the jobs, So, yeah, I'm not trying to discourage people from going to college, but you can have a very good life if you like working with your hands and you choose that direction.
One of the examples that we use is that sometimes kids go and maybe after a semester, they say, I don't want to do this. And they're good kids, hardworking, because I know we've got one back from 2 years ago. I just saw him, I was talking to him, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I said, give me your resume, because I knew I had this meeting coming up. Real bright kid, hardworking kid, was an athlete for us, but this just doesn't know about these jobs or wouldn't even begin to know how to connect those. So we talked about, Brian Freed, our new MTSS coordinator, has got some ways to kind of do some tracking on some kids where we can reconnect with some kids and say, hey, what are you doing now? And are you looking? So then we can put some of these kids in touch with some of these businesses here. And these are, I think as we went on the table, we're talking about jobs that start out paying $40,000 a year. These are livable wage jobs. These are not seasonal jobs, that they can grow into other positions within their businesses. And I think we need to really kind of expose our kids to some of those things.
Yeah, then you don't have college debt hanging over your head.
All pros and cons.
Yeah,
Yep.
so for those who are appropriate, they need to look. At the Career Center, at our last meeting, we brought up two approvals at the end of the meeting. We went into executive session to review the agreement with the Ohio Association of Public School Employees for the Career Center, and also the, gotta get the ACE-SCE plan. Those are the administrators, the secretaries, and so on. So we approved the contracts for those two groups, or the directions for those groups, because the ACE-SCE I don't know that they actually they don't have a union, so it's a little different. But, and what I found interesting, and the packages are here if anybody wants to review them, and I don't want to go over them tonight, but what I found interesting was the superintendent has gotten all three of those groups to buy in to their goal of having no deficit spending in the 5-year forecast. We want to go out all 5 years, no deficit spending. And he went to the three groups and said, we need your help to accomplish this objective. And he got them all on board.
Huh.
And I thought that was very, very impressive. What an excellent way to run a district, and no criticism is intended here, folks. But what an excellent way to pull the group together and to say, we're in this together, and we need to be fiscally responsible. And he did get some interesting changes in their contracts in order to achieve that, because they were looking at about $700,000 in the 5th year, and now it's assuming the teachers get approved in the same way that these first two did, it will be zero. It will have no deficit spending. So I just thought that was really cool. I wanted to share that. So as a board, we all sat there after the superintendent, after Dave Mangus finished talking to us about it, and we all looked at each other and said, I think there's 8 districts who know who they're going to talk to for when they have to do the next superintendent search.
We're not doing one.
But if they're happy with their current superintendents or not, when the next one comes along, they know who they're going to talk to. So anyhow, so that's all I have for you.
All right, Mr. Naaman, I guess,
Yeah, just a couple comments, I just what Mr. Evans just said too. Really thank you and best wishes to Mr. Amari and Mr. Sokol. I know my kids had them, throughout the years here at Heights, and excellent experiences for both of these individuals. I wish them all the best. Good luck to our spring sports programs too, as well as they compete in the state meets for track and also the state playoffs for softball and baseball. I think that's about it. So, yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Adler?
Well, as a former baseball and softball mom, I have this, excitement for our sports teams as they go forward, because tournament time is so exciting.
Yeah.
So good luck to our baseball and our softball teams. Gosh, they're doing so well, so let's just hope it continues all next week and beyond. And I had the privilege to go to our Godspell musical on Saturday. I just want to say I'm just so impressed with the talent that we have here, and I enjoyed it so much. The other thing I was impressed with, that I could actually hear them, because I know I've gone to different shows in the past, when the audio system in our auditorium was so bad. So it was so nice to be able to hear these talented singers and actors as they were up on stage. And I can't believe we're already in the middle of May, and graduation is upon us, and the end of the school year is just around the corner as well. So, keep up the good work, students, teachers, staff, and we'll see how things go on graduation and end of the school year.
And it's outdoors.
Outdoors.
I did read, but if it's a rainy day, are we just going?
Never rains at Heights High, Mrs. Schukert. Now, you know that. As an alum, you know that. No, we'll keep an eye on the forecast,
Okay.
and we'll have some alternative plans, and especially with some of the things that the governor came out with today, it
Okay,
gives us
okay.
a little bit more flexibility, so.
Yay. All right. I don't have anything. I'm just excited that we're almost in June. So keep it up. It's good stuff. We're doing good stuff. Any possible future agenda items? Hearing none. Agenda information, it should be noted that the Board of Education members received their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting. Thus, they've had considerable opportunity to study it, ask questions, etc. Upcoming meetings on Wednesdays at 7 p.m., May 26th, June 9th, and June 23rd, 2021. At this time, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC Section 121.22G1 for the purpose of discussing the employment and compensation of personnel. Can I get a second?
Sure. Why
Seconded
not?
by Mr. Suchaki. Any discussion? There will not be action taken after. Correct?
Who's this?
Correct.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. So, roll call.
Mrs. Schukert,
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mr. Hammond.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. It is 8:12, and we are going